People don't know this, but that's actually your voice.
People forget.
It's beautiful. You're a songbird of a generation. All right, let's start with some news here. This is Thursday, so we're going to, of course, discuss the Thursday night game at some point here. We've also got some college stuff. But I think this is interesting. So we're 2 weeks in, and people start looking at, okay, well, who's the best team in the NFL? Here's my power rankings, my column, right? 5,000 words on why I think that
first.
The Bucs can go all the way. So we got a lot of feedback from people about the fact that the Patriots are number 2 in our PFF ELO ranks and how horrible that was. So I think it's worth taking some time here. So first off, let me ask you this. Patriots come in at number 2. What's your feel? Do you think that's right?
I do think that's right. And the purposes of ELO is to predict things like the Vegas spread and to eventually, pick wins at the end of the season. And so the Patriots losing to the Jaguars in week 2, that they did look like a worse team than the Jaguars in week 2. But prior information plus the way in which they go about their business, I think still keeps them as a top team in the league. And whether it's 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever, I don't necessarily think they should fall all the way down to like 10 because of one performance.
Right. The funny thing that people forget is that one game is a small part of the many ways that game could play out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the final score does indicate what happened, but there are all these little things along the way that could go the other way and often do as a part of result, but not so much the process. Right. Yeah. So they're still a good team and, they made some decisions. I think what's interesting about the Patriots, honestly, is that for some reason they weren't aggressive in that game, right? Like punting on, was it 4th and 3 or something like that at the end of the game, down a couple scores. That just didn't make any sense to me. But I don't think you can argue that they're not a top 3 team in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's for the same reason that we would come out of the AFC Championship game a season ago basically saying, yeah, the Patriots and the Jaguars played even though the Patriots won by 4. Take those 2 teams and say, yeah, they play basically an even game. We come out of they graded well in some situations. I think Brady's still been fine.
No. I mean, I don't know if you know this. Brady's in the tank now.
Yeah. Right. So
there are probably 20 quarterbacks that you could stick on the Patriots and they'd win a Super Bowl.
Really?
25 maybe.
Oh, okay.
What does Eli Manning have? 13 championships if he plays for the Patriots?
I would say 14 and a half.
Do you think that Aaron Rodgers would ever throw an interception?
Maybe an interception, but no turnover where he plays.
50% touchdown percentage.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so funny to me. And again, like you said, the Patriots were not aggressive, right? They had like a 4th and 1 on their own end, down I think 11. They punted. I mean, the one time they stopped the Jags, they have a chance to come and make it a 1-score game, and they don't.
It was weird.
And then they threw like a little weird screen pass to Cordero Patterson and decided to kick a field goal after that.
2 left feet.
Yeah, it was odd, and I do think so. This is obviously not analytical at all, but you can I think kind of tell that the sense of urgency for the Patriots doesn't turn on until week 5, right? That's why it's so
Is that when it turns on? I think you could argue it's later, right? I think they win a lot of their games early in the season based on just how much better they are in every facet, and oftentimes that comes through. That certainly didn't come through here, and I think the decision-making standpoint. Or the decision-making component is one that usually they have the edge on. I don't think they did here. But before we kick Brady in the can, first off, citing stats, bad enough in general, because most of them are pretty worthless. But citing them after 2 games, where 50% of those games have come against the best defense in the NFL is laughable. I almost cussed, but I didn't want to make Stopsky bleep something out. I feel bad. It's a Thursday.
He really leans into that bleep too, because
I lean into the swear word.
That's true.
All right, next thing you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's talk briefly about how PFF Greenline's done through 2 weeks. Now, it is kind of difficult, right?
I just said stats through 2 weeks don't make any sense.
I know, but we got to give the people what they want. To
all right, so this is actually a good time to say that, of course, we are brought to you by mybookie.ag, and there's nothing that goes better with PFF Greenline than mybookie.ag. So PFF Greenline, if you're a PFF Elite subscriber, you can get all the picks for every single game. You get spread, money line, and over under. You get a lot of the power rankings that go behind it. Get some key, data points, whether it be injuries or snaps per game or quarterback data points. And that is paired well with mybookie.ag. So head to mybookie.ag, you place any bet that you want. You can get on in-game live betting, which is super important. Customer service is really solid, and they make it easy to cash out. I know I've used it for a while, as have you, to great satisfaction. So head to mybookie.ag, use promo code PFF to get a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit. PFF plus MyBookie. You play, you win, you get paid. Okay, so you can head to Greenline and check out how we've done so far. But what I actually want to discuss here is more than that. I want to talk a little bit about getting lines early and how useful that can be. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're going to measure ourselves on. So when you go to Greenline and you look at the numbers there for how we've done through 2 weeks, which is whatever, you make whatever you want out of that. Right. What I want to point you to is that we bet the games as soon as we see the lines. That's why we do the Sunday night podcast. That's why we talk about them on Monday. And that's why on Tuesday morning, as soon as those things come out, you got to be on there.
Yeah, because for example, last week on Tuesday, New England was a pick against Jacksonville, and then by the time that game's played, right, the number moves out to -1.5 for New England, and we don't have a pick on it anymore. And so you can understand some of the difficulty in terms of judging the picks, right? Is that a pick or is it not a pick? For example, and we haven't had any where the pick has actually changed from one team to another, but I'm assuming we will at one point in the season. So as George said, first off, like this week we had, I think when the picks were displayed on Tuesday, we had all but I think 2 of the games had at least one pick on them. Now as I'm looking at it, Cincinnati, Carolina's gone off the board. Oakland, Miami's gone off the board, and then Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh are now no picks. Yep. And again, that's just because as the week goes by, there's information like injuries, but there's also just like people betting into seemingly our picks. And so even the edges that you do have, right? So we still have, for example, tonight we still have.
Hey.
A
Easy
nice
there.
pick tonight.
Easy there.
The market could move in our direction. You could have less of an edge there.
The last thing that you have on the notes here for news, can you explain this to me? What does this even mean?
I have Daniel Carlson and Zane Gonzalez releases, which you first scoffed at. But if you remember earlier this offseason when the Vikings traded a few picks to move up and get Daniel Carlson, we briefly discussed that trading or drafting a kicker at all is a bad move.
It's a crime. You should be punished by getting your job taken from you.
You should be punished by only getting the normal In-N-Out burger menu for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. So like, because this is the very reason, right? So the Vikings made the right move in getting rid of Carlson, right? He obviously was not going to help them win. They're a Super Bowl champion, caliber team.
Vikings fans, I'm sorry. It's all over.
It's all over. But like they cut him. In previous regimes, though, we've seen guys like Daniel, we've seen guys like Blair Walsh, we've seen guys like even Zane Gonzalez struggled last year, Roberto Aguayo. We've seen guys that have gotten far more than their allotted time based upon performance because of the draft capital that you used on them. The second most important thing a kicker brings to the table is expendability beyond accuracy. And drafting a guy loses him some expendability.
I would argue that you're just a moron for ever drafting a kicker or a punter. Because if they're good, they only hurt your decision making, unless you have a really shrewd coach, in which case maybe he overcomes it.
That's a really great
57-yarder.
That's a really great point because we were watching the Thursday night game last week, and everybody was giving Baltimore crap for making the right decision and going for it on 4th down when they were down 21.
Yeah,
and there's like, well,
geez, got
to get that 3 to cut it to 18, and it's like, well, you have the best kicker in the league. He's money from 60 yards away. It's like, yeah, but that's still a bad decision, and the good kicker is making you make a poor decision.
1, 2, 3 points. Do you want me to continue counting to 7 so that you can get?
No, I mean you need twice as many more than twice as many fingers to do that.
Yes,
so
one more than twice as many. Yeah. It's a shocking mathematical fact that kicking a field goal is stupid. Okay, that was news. Let's move on to the unstable stat of the week, brought to you by the Supreme Court. Unstable stat of the week.
No comment.
Great. All right, our unstable stat of the week this week is big time throws. Steve Palazzolo's favorite thing is the big time throw. So those are throws that earn the highest level of PFF grade. When you see them, you start jumping up and down because they're incredible. They're not necessarily touchdowns. A lot of them do result in touchdowns, first downs, big gains. But the key here is that it's a throw that is based on how good what the quarterback does is, not necessarily whether it ends up in 7 points or not. And as much as it hurts, it's not something that's particularly stable.
Yeah, and I mean, it's more stable than touchdowns.
Well, let's be real. There's a lot of things that are more stable than touchdowns. Supreme Court, probably more stable than touchdowns.
Maybe, hopefully.
Well, we'll see.
I mean, at least the appointments, right?
I haven't heard yet.
Yeah. And so like when you look at guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, weirdly, that's kind of a thing that I did not expect. Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady, Big Ben, all have pretty high big time throw rates through 2 weeks. You look at guys like the Marcus Mariota Blaine train, have none so far. Joe Flacco, Mitch Trubisky, Sam Darnold, Sam Bradford have almost none, right? Those are things that if you're looking at places where regression will occur, they might be the first places you look in regular, data for quarterbacks. These are even independent of whether it was under pressure or clean or whatever.
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick one is interesting because his is not just high. He's not just in first. His is like astronomically high. So like his big time throw rate right now is practically double what the leader was last season. That was Deshaun Watson, by the way. So that tells you a lot, right?
Watson now twice as many turnover worthy plays as big time throws through 2 weeks.
Yeah. What I think is important to note here is that there is value in making the big throw, but because it's not that consistent, there you have to place a little bit more value when looking forward in things like avoiding turnover-worthy plays, which is a little more stable, and then things that are less sexy, but generally more consistent, like just how are they playing in a clean pocket overall, right? Because you want to avoid the small negatives; those build up and can kill drives just as much as being able to make the big time throw is pretty cool. Let's talk about Fitzpatrick and Mahomes here for a second because I think it's interesting. So they're 1-2, obviously both playing great. I know where my answer lies here. I'm going to let you go first. Fitzpatrick Mahomes, who keeps this going longer?
Yeah, it's all about evidence, right? So for one quarterback, we have a lot of evidence of a lot of things. And for another
Went to Harvard, though.
He did go to Harvard, and his
evidence,
his beard / bomber jacket thing is something else. So we have a lot of evidence with Fitzpatrick. If he were to continue at this rate or even like half of this rate, it would be a reversion away from something that he's done his entire career. Mahomes is someone that, other than his college data, we have very little evidence of anything for. And so, it's a nice, interesting evidence versus absence of evidence thing. I would say Mahomes is probably more likely to keep it up because his coach has a longer track record. We don't have the evidence of him being poor for an extended period of time. And that's why I would lean there.
Yes. The answer is Mahomes. And here's the thing. I'm all about like guys can change, growth mindset thing. So I'm only buying half of your argument there. Like if Fitzpatrick changes, he changes. But the thing is what he's doing is results based on results is equally impressive, but he's doing it in a way that is harder. So he is making ridiculous throws into tight coverage, highest rate of accurately placed passes into tight coverage in the league thus far. Lowest rate of uncatchable throws. Those are not, there's such a thing as catchable and inaccurate, and those are valuable. They're a lot more valuable than things that are uncatchable, and he's not doing that. But what Mahomes has is Andy Reid, and Andy Reid has a brilliant offense. So brilliant, in fact, that Mahomes leads the league in open throws. Those are throws with a step or more of separation. 90% of his throws, step or more of separation, and is leading the league in average depth of target. I think. Maybe Allen's ahead of him. Whatever. Allen doesn't even count in this context, right? All the other guys that have these great numbers in terms of open throws have average depths of target below 10. Mahomes is up there in like 12, 13. So he is pushing the ball down the field. Right, he's getting the ball to the line to gain and past, and he is throwing to open guys, and he's accurate, and he's got a cannon. So this is more sustainable because the actual system will support it, whereas Fitzpatrick is just like lights out, shooting fadeaway threes from the corner, right? Which is just it's impressive, but it's probably not going to sustain.
Here's a question that I think that made me think of. You look at all these people that bought into the Bears going into the season based upon Matt Nagy and his connection with Andy Reid, and you look at how things have transpired in Detroit with Patricia, and you look at Indianapolis with Reich. I do think that this is an important anecdote and maybe possibly something to look into in terms of the trees, right? The coaching trees. Like, just because Matt Nagy called plays for 4 or 5 games last year for Kansas City, and they had all those same characteristics. Alex Smith had a very, very high rate of open targets a season ago, does not mean that that'll translate. And I think what you've seen with Chicago's offense so far, for example, is the fact that he's not getting as many open throws. He's also not as accurate and everything like that. So you need not only a good coach, but you also need, the players, and then you need to also temper your expectations about assistants when they join new teams. Yeah,
the coach has never thrown the pass.
Yeah,
people forget that. Alrighty, on to the trend zone. We don't have a sponsor. I'm not going to read that. It's brutal. It's mean. Trend zone this week is oh man, people love this. I feel like it's such a copycat league, but it's also copycat media. And
whoa, no, Twitter's full of a bunch of independent actors.
Right, but I'm not talking about Twitter.
Okay.
I don't live on Twitter. Twitter is a bunch of morons. People don't live on Twitter. There aren't that many people that actually go on Twitter for like football consumption, by and large, compared to the whole universe.
But does all the football consumption subsequently get to Twitter, though?
I don't know. Twitter sucks. All right. The point is that if you watch a football broadcast, there are far more people watching the broadcast than are watching it on Twitter, if that makes sense.
That's probably fair.
That is my point. And what I want to talk about there is actually it's broken in Twitter a little bit too. Interestingly, is that teams that go 0-2 have no chance of ever making the playoffs. It's impossible. If you go 0-2, you might as well just quit and hang them up. And the funny thing about this is that, okay, the 0-2 part is not good. It doesn't help you. But that's because if you suck, if you're a bad team, you're probably not going to the playoffs, whether you start 0-2 or 1-1 or somehow win 2 games. If you suck, you're not going to the playoffs. And if you're a good team that happens to go 0-2 because you face maybe 2 other good teams, that's not impossible for you to make the playoffs.
Yeah, your odds are big. Again, it's one of those run the ball to win versus win the game to run the ball. It's, again, being bad makes you 0-2 more than not being bad does. And I think that, it's also an arbitrary cutoff, right? So like 1-1 is in many, so if you're the Bears, then you're 1-1. I think you can make an argument that you're functionally 2-0, or you can make the argument that you're functionally 0-2. Same thing for New Orleans, right? So if New Orleans would have lost to Cleveland, right, if that field goal by Zane Gonzalez or the extra point by Zane Gonzalez or the other field goal by Zane Gonzalez goes in, New Orleans is 0-2, but we're not going to sit here and say, "Oh my gosh, that one kick now takes your playoff odds and cuts them in half." Right. Just for one game. So it is sort of, again, this sort of arbitrary, like, why does it have to be the first 2 games? And there probably is some psychology to it, but nonetheless, and not all 0-2 teams are created equal. As you have here, Buffalo has probably a 4% chance to make the playoffs, which actually seems high.
That's way too high.
But Seattle at 0-2 has a 20% chance of making the playoffs, which also seems kind of high. But it does depend.
Way too high.
It does depend on
that should be -5. They drafted a punter. Oh my God.
We were both
brutal.
Admittingly fading the public on Seattle and how much of a disaster they were going to be and how much all these things. And
I just didn't think there was any. I thought what they were saying was so ridiculous that they had to be just playing games with people. And it turns out, no, they actually did want to spread out Rashad Penny. And
I mean, that drive when they were trying to tie the game was the funny. It was all of Seahawks Twitter's wettest dream about the season.
No one knows what Seahawks Twitter is.
So
Seahawks Twitter?
They're at the 40. They're in decent field position. They bunch everybody together. They run the ball with Rashad Penny. They gain a yard. Then on second down, they're like, "All right, guys, time to throw."
Play action.
Spread everybody out.
Oh no!
They throw a hitch to Rashad Penny against a cornerback. And
he has a huge advantage. He's a first-round pick. Do you know that?
He was a first-round pick, so that means he's impressive.
What pick was the cornerback?
Amukamara was also a first-round pick.
Well, there you go. That's the problem. That's why he wasn't able to make the play. That was brutal. I still have faith in... Do I still have faith in Seattle? I don't know. Pete Carroll set up play action this week nicely, though.
Of these teams that are 0-2, which one do you think has the best chance? Like, from your perspective, which one would you not be surprised in if they made the playoffs?
I mean, it's Seattle.
It's Seattle because of the pedigree and the quarterback.
I also don't. The tough thing is they're in a really tough conference, right? So part of me wants to say Houston because I do like Deshaun Watson. I think he comes out of this at some point, but their defense is garbage. And
Watson has, as we said earlier, regressed a little bit.
Right. As good as Watson is, I don't think he's as good as Russell Wilson.
And I think the path for Houston to make the playoffs this season was for Jacksonville to take a step back, which they have not yet. So
Bortles taking a step forward.
Tennessee beat them. So that's not good. That's not a good first step.
All right. We're going to move on now to questions from the dark web. It's important that I get a little hydration here before we start. This is a new Sampo Rotten product. It's a facial mister.
Mister over here.
Can't find it anywhere else. But Sampo Ranta, they are a sparkling water for men.
I mean, finally.
Week 3, they have a special flavor. So they're going to be coming out with flavors every week this week because, of course, it's sparkling water for men and men love football. And so Sampo Ranta is doing everything they can to support that. Their week 3 flavor.
Give the people what they want.
Absolutely. Jalen Rose. Week 3 flavor is Gregarious Ghost Pepper with a hint of testosterone, because when you're on fire and you went to Harvard, you need to feed the flames. Sampo Ranta, sparkling water for men. Find it at Bevmo, Amazon, wherever fine beverages are sold. And their facial mister may be coming out soon. Facial mister is probably the greatest. Facial spray, I guess is what they're calling it. The pink cap's pretty great. It's very nice on planes though when you're traveling and you know your face is getting dry.
I don't think about the moisture in my face as much as you.
Do you think I'll get made fun of for that at all? Think anyone will make fun of? Probably not.
No, I think people are not mean.
That's not what people do.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about questions from the dark web then. We have one from Jonathan Safalo. I think I said that right. Jonathan_Safalo. Do you think it's statistically worth it to bet on spreads? Sorry, I didn't laugh. Spreads with no half points, only rounds up/down. I feel like the slim margin of error is worsened when constantly worried about pushes. Constantly worried about pushes is aggressive. I don't constantly worry about pushes. Talk to Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, the number is there to balance, in theory, to either pick a side or to balance the sides. And, a push, so I feel like this is like psychology that you want to always go against when you're a sports bettor or when you're doing anything, playing, fantasy, all that kind of stuff. You remember the times when you had a win in the bag, right? Maybe Sunday night against, Giants Dallas, and the team backdoor scores a touchdown and you push, and, the endowment effect hits you and you had that money to begin with, right. And then you start to tilt, right? And you forget the times like, for example, in college football, Hawaii comes back and ties the score and pushes against, I believe it was Navy or Army. We forget those, right? We forget the times we got lucky and it helped us. We forget that we can remember the bad beats, right? I think full points, for example, 3, for example, in Atlanta, New Orleans, I think it's just kind of the book's way of protecting itself, right? Obviously, you want to have the 2.5 or the 3.5, depending upon which side you're on. But the 3, I mean, that's baked into our probabilities of covering. So, if a pick's a good pick, you shouldn't worry necessarily about the hook or not the hook.
Yeah, don't worry too much. You can easily overthink betting. I think that's probably what 99% of people do,
and how they get themselves in trouble.
When that happens, you need a little Sampo Ranta in your life. Oh, there it is. This is going to be. People are going to love this.
I need the windshield wipers on my glasses.
Yeah, that's what you need. All right, thank you, Jonathan. Hit us up if you've got any questions. Of course, PFF_George and PFF_Eric. Now you got rid of the last name.
I think for good reason.
Alert. All right, let's move on to some picks here. So, of course, the best place to get all of your picks in and actually get a return on your investment is mybookie.ag. Just remind you again, because some of you guys are you're blowing it if you're not using it. And you can use promo code PFF to get a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit. If you pair that with PFF Greenline, it's a beautiful thing. But we're going to talk about college first, because we are doing some college picks this week. And we have a game that we picked earlier in the week. As I tell everyone, get them early, because that line has now moved closer to what we had. So Oregon is at home facing Stanford, and they are underdogs. They're 3-point underdogs against Stanford. So we took Oregon as our pick. It's now they're only 2-point favorites. Whole point has moved. So certainly less enticing, but our number is such that I'm still confident going with Oregon.
Yeah. So if you just use our PFF Elo college rankings, which go up on the website every week, Oregon, we have it about 38th, and Stanford's 12th, but that only translates to about a 3-point difference in the team. So Oregon being at home, we would actually have them slightly favored in a game like this. And I think it's the secondary stuff that really helps us, think about, this from the perspective of, picking. Whereas where's Stanford's perceived strength? Stanford's perceived strength is Bryce Love running the football. And we saw it against San Diego State, for example. We saw it in most of the USC game. He simply hasn't been efficient this year, or offense hasn't been efficient running the football. Yep. And Oregon thus far, granted they've played some poor opponents, but they are allowing a very, very low, I think it's beneath 20% success rate running the ball against them. Every time that the opposing teams run the ball, they've dumped an average of half an expected point. So I think that matches up really well. And then, if Stanford's going to run the ball on first and second down, then you're putting it in KJ Costello's hands on third down. And I just don't necessarily see that as being a long-term success maker for them. Costello's
been fine. He's like a super steady guy, right? Mm-hmm. Herbert has made some big plays, like 13% big time throw rate. The guy's, he's incredible, right? Makes a lot of positive graded throws. And I think that's what you need in this game against the Stanford defense that is, pretty sound. You got to be willing to make some big plays there. And look, Stanford is coming off, a game in which they just worked over. I'm not talking about their last game, but the game before that, where they just worked over USC, and everyone's like, "Oh, USC's pretty good." It's like, well, yeah, but they had a freshman quarterback got injured on like the second play, and is now the lowest graded quarterback in the Pac-12. So there
was a 7-point swing at the end of the first half where USC misses a fourth down, Stanford drives down, scores. So I mean, and then USC's probably not all that good, right? So in hindsight, it doesn't I think move the needle that much for us.
Justin Herbert, I would buy his Heisman futures now as well. All right, let's go on to the National Football League. Thursday Night Football. Hopefully you're listening to this beforehand. 8:15 or whatever Eastern Time. Jets, Browns in Cleveland, and the Jets are 3 to 3.5 point underdogs at this point. I said that right. The Jets are underdogs.
I was looking at you to make sure that you got it.
You've heard Browns underdogs forever. I don't think they've been a favorite since Indy last year, which we
took
bet on because come on. So that tells you where I'm at. Our model also likes the Jets here. I don't know. I just don't see, unless there's like some strong Baker Mayfield vibes, he comes in there. The Tyrod Taylor, I'm just like not that worried about Tyrod Taylor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and he made a really, really good throw to Antonio Callaway at the end of the game against New Orleans. But if you think about the way that the Browns' first two games have gone, they needed 6 turnovers against Pittsburgh to come back and tie that game. Against the Saints didn't punt until late in the second quarter because they kept fumbling the ball away and missing field goals. Taylor, under pressure this season has been sacked 10 times. He's completed 5 of the 17 passes he's gotten off, right? So he's
3.1 yards per attempt, baby. March him down.
And we know that pressure's unstable, but no pressure. Taylor's got a pretty pedestrian 79.9 pass rating, including
That's not pedestrian. That's below average. That's 21 points below average.
1989 called They Want My Football Take Back. So
Troy Aikman, in fairness, when clean, had a 13 passer rating, so
yeah, that's right. So
did I adjust for era correctly?
Well, I'm surprised you were on Twitter. So Taylor, including like a really big interception. So Cleveland had the lead on their own end, had a clean pocket, threw a pick, intercepted to Marcus Williams, and that turned the entire complexion of that game. And for me, I think if you look at this game tonight, you regress turnover rates to league averages for both sides, right? So if you look at the Jets, they've also had a high number of turnovers that they've committed. If you regress those two things and you look at the strength of the team, and weirdly, the veteran Tyrod Taylor, I don't think compares favorably to the rookie youngest quarterback in the NFL, Sam Darnold.
Oh, is he the youngest? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He's Sean McVay's old enough to be his older brother.
Oh, is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So Darnold, 98.0 passer rating when clean, and that includes the 3 interceptions he's thrown from a clean pocket. So if obviously you can't take those away, but he's completed 73% of his passes, averaging about 10 yards per throw from a clean pocket, and he hasn't really been pressured that much. And so I look at this and I say, for the first 2 weeks, they're sort of like feeling themselves out in terms of against Detroit. There's no analytical edging in the studio.
We need to do that again.
and then
now that we're on camera, that would play really well.
Down 20-0 to the Dolphins. They came back and made that thing into a game. So I like the Jets here. I think our model would make it more of a pick 'em. Maybe Cleveland -1. Although I don't really like that.
And it likes the over too, though. That has moved. I think when we talked about it on Sunday night or Monday morning, it was like 3 a.m. Monday morning. I haven't complained yet. I just had a really.
It was
tough
Sunday
weekend.
night in Hawaii. It was Monday morning here.
Yeah, because I just have such a hard, arduous journey. But we battled through. When we talked about it then, it was 39.5 was the total, and it's now I think 41.5. So,
and there's still value on the over.
Still value on the over,
not as much as at 39.
Would have been nice to have 39. I think there's a real chance that the Cleveland defense is good, but it can be true that they're good and the turnover thing can regress. Like people are just going to freak out about that. And then here's the thing that I like the most. What do you think I like the most in taking the Jets over the Browns? What component of these teams do you think I like the most when taking the Jets over the Browns?
I think it's that the Jets can cover a little bit.
Oh, that's one of them, but there's a huge disparity somewhere that I'm excited to take. And none of these guys throw a pass. I'm a big Todd Bowles fan. There's a reason that the Browns have not won a game in a very long time.
Despite having the fundamentals for winning a game.
Just going to say that. So I think Todd Bowles has done a fantastic job. He's gotten more out of less for a while. And now that I think he's got a quarterback that, can actually do some things, and they have some nice pieces on defense as well. Like,
one of the things we'll be looking for, we had the Jets over 6 wins in our last win total. They were projected for 7.43. So maybe well on their way to that mark if they won tonight.
Especially if they won 2 road wins.
The Browns are projected still to have 5.34 wins. They were not expected to win the New Orleans
0.34 games.
Sorry. But they were not projected to win the New Orleans game. They were not projected to win the Pittsburgh game early in the season. So our win total for them hasn't really budged after going 0-1. That's correct. Yep.
Imagine if they went 2-0 though. Thank God they didn't go 0-2. That's the only thing, right? Then we'd have to write them off. They still have a chance of the playoffs now because they tied that game. Oh, man. All right, look ahead. Week 3. It's not really a look ahead because it's Thursday already. We are in week 3. We had a real tough time here figuring out the lock of the week this week. And as usual, we're not going to give it out on the podcast, but if you go to Greenline, you'll see it bright and early tomorrow. Maybe tonight. You got to check it out. And you can also check out the Sports Illustrated Friday gambling show. We're doing a little video hit there with our lock of the week. So
that's why George has this really nice shirt on, no collar here.
It's nice.
That's what I said.
Thank you. Just checking myself out here. I also have my Sampo Ranta facial spray. So I won't get made fun of for that either. Let's start with a game that we discussed for a little while. This isn't our lock of the week. I'll let people know that. But it is one that it's close. It's very tempting. We talked about this one also on our early look ahead picks. And this is the Giants getting 6 against the Texans. I don't understand why it's 6. Why is it 6?
Right. This does not mean we like the Giants as a team. This means that this is an atrocious mispricing.
Loletta is not playing.
The Houston's defense gave up 2 consecutive game-winning, like a game-tying field goal drive to Blaine Gabbert and a game-winning drive to Blaine Gabbert. And one of the game-winning drive, Gabbert threw a pass to himself, ran backwards 15 yards, and then threw an illegal forward pass.
It's impressive.
And they still somehow lost that game. Houston does come home for their first home game of the season. That probably does lend a little bit, but I would imagine the home field advantage in Dallas is more substantial than the home field advantage at Reliant Stadium or whatever it's called.
Hey, don't hate on Houston.
And I don't think the Giants so it might be clouded by us because our expectation of the Giants is lower than the public's, but I don't think the Giants' first 2 games move them down the peg 3 points from last week when they were only 3-point dogs now to where they're 6-point dogs. So I think just doing the math here, we would probably like the Giants at +6 here.
I think you're insane if you think Houston is a better team than Dallas.
I would agree.
I think Dallas has a great defense, and look, Dak Prescott actually played well in that game, but there's no way that the Giants should be 3-point dogs in Dallas and then go few miles away to Houston and all of a sudden double that total to be 6-point dogs to a team that isn't as good. Here's the thing. They threw the ball to Saquon Barkley behind the line of scrimmage
47 times.
1,000 times. It was stupid. But and I think part of it, you mentioned this earlier, like part of it is like, oh, they have this shiny new toy. They want to, let Saquon run. So we're going to put him in disadvantageous situations. Let him break 3 tackles. Looks amazing. Gains 3 yards. Whoop-de-doo.
Boom.
I think part of that was Byron Jones, Chidobe Awuzie, that secondary for Dallas, combined with their blitzing, which apparently the Giants did not know existed. They've never seen a stunt ever before in their entire life. Forced their hand a little bit. So the Texans coverage, nowhere near the Cowboys coverage. If they don't throw the ball to Odell Beckham 20 freaking times in this game, then they have failed.
Corey Davis had a really good game against Houston's defense last week.
They just gave Odell $1 gazillion. Right. Throw him the ball deep 100 times. And if Eli Manning can't get one in the same area code, then pull his you-know-what. I came close again. It's ridiculous. Just put the ball in a place that he can catch it. The guy made a catch on a ball that was nearly in the stands 4 years ago.
Well, so that's the mismatch.
Nope, Saquon's open 17 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
That's the mismatch that I think is clear in New York's advantage is the outside corners of Houston versus him.
Yes.
Odell Beckham Jr.
Not AJ Green. Also, but like Evan Ingram, when he doesn't drop the ball, is good as well.
The advantage that Houston might have, and we talked about this a little bit when we were talking about Dallas against New York, is the fact that Watson as a runner in the zone scheme has been effective. That was like their most effective play the last 2 weeks. We've gone against Houston twice already this season. Is either him breaking contain in the passing game or him as a runner on design stuff. And I do think that the Giants, if they're well coached, which we think with the with Shermer, they're probably not as badly coached. They're probably going to adjust here and see that's the one thing Houston can do, and they're going to try to stop it.
And they've got to give extra attention to the pass rush. Like just line up in a heavy set.
Yeah.
Max protect. Like it's not rockets. There's a reason that passing from heavy sets is so much better.
Or take Barkley and actually have him block, because that's one of the issues with having
his quads only work when he's catching the ball.
Oh, I see. Does he catch him between the quads?
Catch him between the quads.
Like if he breaks a finger, he's not
his
no worse
his
for the
ability to deadlift 300 pounds and then do a 40-inch box jump only lends itself to catching the ball or running it, but not blocking.
Or co-hosting the PFF Forecast.
There you go. Little known fact. I could do that too. Which one do you want to talk about next?
Let's talk about our 2 favorite teams. I'm just kidding. The Kansas City Chiefs giving up 6.5 points.
Love the Falcons.
At home against the San Francisco Giorgio Niners.
Yep. It's tough. The spread, so 6.5 is a lot, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt that Kansas City. So here's the thing. If Kansas City fails to score a touchdown on a drive in the first quarter, maybe there's a chance this is sort of hard to cover, because their defense is such that San Francisco should be able to put up plenty of points. I don't know. Our model is with Kansas City, and I can't argue with that, to be perfectly honest with you.
I don't think Eric Berry will ever play another football game again. And he doesn't look like he's playing again this week. And it's a heel injury.
Wait, you weren't kidding?
No, he's
like he's dealt with stuff. So when you say that, I'm like, what did I miss?
Well, he has like a heel injury, and he's coming off an Achilles on the same foot.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's just really tough. And he's already an ACL. He had cancer for Christ, and then he came back as a first-team All-Pro. So like, so their defense is a disaster. It's
brutal,
right?
Yeah.
They gave up 21 points in a second quarter last week, and I think honestly the only thing Pittsburgh ran out of was time against them last week.
It's not like in the second half they were on the verge of coming back.
So the thing I think will be a decided advantage for San Francisco here is the fact that Kansas City, when they go base, they have guys that simply can't cover. So like Reggie Ragland's a linebacker that they don't want covering anybody. Anthony Hitchens has given up 16 of 17 passes into his coverage caught, or
Not
17
good.
of 18.
That's bad.
What do the San Francisco 49ers like to do?
Well, they like to throw the ball to tight ends out of heavy sets.
And backs out of heavy sets.
Backs as
and
well.
so it's going to be tough for, I think, Kansas City to stop what San Francisco does best. So
here's the thing, though. I said if Kansas City doesn't score a touchdown, maybe it's tough for them to cover. If San Francisco fails to score a touchdown, you could make the exact same argument. Here's the thing. That San Francisco doesn't have the greatest defense ever, certainly. And what Kansas City has done, Pittsburgh, they're a disaster defensively, but the Chargers have not been a disaster defensively, and they dice them up, right? I mentioned this. He's got open guys running 20 yards downfield, and he's putting the ball on the money.
Right. You're saying basically if San Francisco kicks field goals like they often want to,
that's not going to work.
That's not going to work. They got to be
absolutely
perfect.
Railroaded if that happens. So,
Matt Breida, very good last week.
Great. First, was he a first round pick? Top 5 pick?
Yeah, I think he's.
They gave up 2 firsts and a second for him, right?
Well, then they got a second back.
That's right. They moved up.
They got a second back.
Yeah, that was a good trade for them. Rushing leader, you can't put a price on that.
No.
Let's move on.
Can.
Buffalo, Minnesota. This line's now at 16.5.
We're not taking Buffalo.
The spread is the spread. Here's where the model and us converge. The over.
Yep.
It's in Minnesota.
Yep.
Minnesota's going to try and just put the hammer down, right? They have a bunch of players that can make that happen. They go up big. You know who I want at quarterback to try and get some of those big throws in the air?
He's a garbage over player.
I already feel like Josh Allen is just going to be one of my favorite quarterbacks to bet on, as long as I'm not taking the spread.
So I believe we had the under on Green Line last week in the Bills-Chargers game, and that game got to 2 points below the over-under and sat there for all the way until 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and then Allen just decides he's going to be Mr. Overcover
Take matters
guy.
into my own hands.
And I do think so obviously
it was overwhelming.
If the Vikings cover the spread, you're essentially saying, and it goes under, you're essentially saying they win 30-0 or 31-0 or 24-0. And I just don't necessarily see that happening. I see the Vikings scoring a lot on a defense where a cornerback quit midway through the game. And I see the Bills, and the Vikings defense I don't think is quite as strong as it was a year ago. I do see Allen just coming in and kind of getting some garbage touchdowns. So 41, I think they breathe over this.
What's funny is that on Green Line right now, it actually looks like the consensus has gone down. It's at 40.5. It's been stuck at 41 forever and has dipped.
Bet it up. Go get yourself some.
Yeah, get some. That half point, man. Avoid that push. When the Bills win 21-20. Oh my God. What if the Vikings lose this game?
Well, I think most people admit
this is certainly counts as a trap game. If there was ever a trap game, this is a bear trap game, right? So the Vikings just played a very tough overtime tie against Aaron Rodgers. Winning that game would have been huge.
Yeah.
It was emotional. They should have lost it. Then they
should have won it.
Then they should have won it, and then they tied it. They have the Rams, maybe the best team in the NFL over the first 2 weeks.
Next Thursday.
So they've certainly already begun thinking about that game. Yep. The Bills suck. They're awful. They've got people quitting. How are they even a football team? They come in and I'm just saying the groundwork has been laid.
And the Vikings of yesteryear would have lost this game to Chad Hutchinson or Rick Meyer or somebody. But the thing about the thing that you're missing here, and I do agree.
Oh, what am I missing? Tell me.
If anybody's hurt for the Vikings, they're inactive on Sunday, right? There's no way they're doing anything.
Sure.
The Bills, the trap game requires an NFL team to be playing on the other side.
Okay. Josh Allen has a strong arm. Let's do.
My take wasn't accurate.
You're fine. Let's do. I think it's probably the best game of the week. This is Atlanta Nolans. So we talked about gut reaction last week with Atlanta, and when I saw that Carolina line, my gut reaction was, "This is way too high. This should be a close game."
Yep.
And the model liked Atlanta. Deion Jones gets hurt. People have exorcisms in the street. They're crying, they're sobbing, there's gnashing of teeth because Deion Jones is so good. They lose Keanu Neal, more chaos ensues, and the Falcons cover. So, again, same situation. New Orleans, very good team. Atlanta, 3-point favorites, and we like Atlanta here.
Yeah.
How much are you ready to sweat?
I mean, I after last season of taking Atlanta, I had to go to the store and buy a ton more, dry fits.
I just don't wear a shirt at this point.
When you watch
I need
a religious
towel.
Experience. I mean,
I lay on a yoga mat, just sweat, do some
meditation.
I did Bikram yoga earlier today. Oh, really? Did you heat the room up? No, I just put on some Falcons tape. All 22.
You have your eyes closed for quarters 1 and 3. Anyway,
I filtered to just red zone Falcons.
Oh, that doesn't seem like a soothing experience, except for last week.
So this is what I want to talk about with Falcons. You can make a lot of injuries. And injuries, yes, they matter. If the people replacing them and the coaching staff that's coaching them has just been woefully unprepared. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. I'm going to assume that they're a competent organization. Everything has shown me that they are.
Correct.
And Devontae KZ actually played well. And yes, they gave up a ton to Christian McCaffrey, but it didn't much matter. They probably should have won that game by more.
They gave up as much to McCaffrey as all the people who are going to play Kamara this week in fantasy hope they give up to Kamara and still won.
Yep. And so what I'm trying to get at here is that decision-making, efficiency in important areas can make a much, much bigger difference. We've seen evidence that they're now willing to go for it in some fourth down situations instead of kicking some field goals. And last week, their red zone was dramatically better. They had, I think, 4 trips into the red zone inside the 10. They converted on all of them. We saw Calvin Ridley running slants over the middle. We saw the tight end getting involved. You know what we didn't see?
I saw a tear going down your cheek.
You know what we didn't see?
An in-breaking route.
Tell me what we didn't see.
We didn't see shovel passes to Teron Ward.
Did not see that. What else did we not see?
Field goals.
What else did we not see? What's the worst play that you can...
Goal line fade to Julio.
Yeah, we did not see any of those. And that is... Look, we have gone through such a mired journey with this Sarkisian Falcons that buried in there somewhere is the fact that this was the most explosive offense in the NFL a short year and a half, 2 years ago. And all those players are still there on the offensive side of the ball. And if anything, they've gotten better. And please don't talk to me about Devontae Freeman being out hurting them. It helps them. Tevin Coleman's a better running back.
But his efficiency in
Shut up. Yeah. He's a better running back. There's not even a question. Devontae Freeman, for what it's worth, is fantastic. And the reason I'm saying that Tevin Coleman's a better running back is that he's just such a better receiver.
Right. The tweets about the difference between Coleman and
Freeman as runners
is silly. Runners do not own their success rates. They do not own their efficiencies.
Run blocking is all that matters.
Well, and not only that, but what situations are they in? Coleman's playing on third downs and it's silly. So again, we don't care about the Freeman being out. He's a good player, but again, running backs don't matter. What I like about the Falcons, as you said, preparedness for this spot. Devondre Campbell was a linebacker they took in the same draft as they took Deion Jones, who has previously been covering their tight ends.
Right.
He's a very good coverage linebacker. The two of them made a great duo. Duke Riley was a guy they drafted early last year. Again, preparing for situations like this. They know it's a It's a 2 linebacker league. They know it has to be a coverage linebacker league. They're ready for this. DeMondre Casey, same thing, right? The Falcons,
if I remember,
prepared for this.
A team with a ton of injuries did well last year. Can you jog my memory?
No, that doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen ever.
When your kicker and your running back and your left tackle and your quarterback, when they get hurt,
those don't matter.
They don't win.
Coverage linebacker though. Oh wait, they lost coverage linebacker.
They did too, and it didn't matter.
Darn it. Next game you want to talk about?
Let's go to Philadelphia and talk about the Eagles minus 6.5 at home against Frank Lord Reich.
I love the Eagles. Love the Eagles. I know it's 6.5. I know that Carson Wentz is just coming back, but okay. So let me take you through why I agree. So first off, on Green Line, I'll let you guys know. You're getting a lot of info right now. You're welcome. We like the Eagles fairly comfortably. So the whole thing with Indy and Andrew Luck has been, okay, we got to get the ball out of his hands quickly. I think his time to throw is under 2.5. I might need to check that. I will. But the Eagles are prepared, I think, to cause some issues. They don't blitz a lot. Yep. And that can make you look, I can't just take advantage of, I've got a linebacker here, I've got him ISO'd up, I can make a quick throw. They can force you to take a little bit longer, and they can get there quickly without blitzing. So this would worry me. I do think T.Y. Hilton probably gets deep once or twice.
Yep.
But I also think that turnover-worthy play Andrew Luck shows up. And for a guy that has the most turnover-worthy plays under pressure so far, that would worry me a little bit. And here's last but not least, my man Doug. He does not want to lose.
Are the Huevos team captain this week?
On the field, 10th and 11th man.
So you can never underestimate the 10th. Here's something that gives me a little bit of encouragement. Carson Wentz probably could have played football week 1. Probably could have played football.
You think so?
Probably could have played football week 2.
You believe those videos of him sprinting and launching 50-yard throws?
Right. So there's a lot of questions about whether or not he's going to be ready to play this.
Hold on. I got to interrupt you for a second. What if he got cradled by a defensive tackle on his way to the ground, though?
Like a baby?
Yeah, in swaddling clothes. Susceptible to re-injury.
The Chiefs don't have anybody who can get close to the quarterback, so don't even talk to me about that. So the idea that Wentz, he could be rusty for sure.
Yep.
But I have a little bit more faith in that they waited for him for week 3. He's clearly ready, right? Because what's the difference between week 1 and 3, right?
I mean, if they're rushing him back because they're 1-1,
they're ridiculous.
Then I have grossly overestimated every part of that organization that has made really smart move after really smart move, right? So that would just be counterintuitive to everything that we know about them. And then here's the thing. The Colts defense blows. They're 30th in our defensive ranking. The Eagles are well into the top 5 in every facet.
Yep.
And it's 6.5. If they were 2-0 and Wentz had played, this is what, 9?
11.
There you go.
So here's a sneaky thing that I think will happen. Indy gave up a lot to Chris Thompson last week.
Oh, know what you're gonna say.
They gave up 5 catches to Joe Mixon week 1. Mm-hmm. Corey Clement is going to be in all of George's DFS lineups. Get them ready.
I play 10,000 DFS lineups every week.
You have an optimizer on your computer that goes through them. You don't write about it weirdly. I never. Do you live tweet?
Live tweet. I actually stream.
Okay.
You can't find it. You have to go on the Silk Road to find my DFS stream sesh that occurs.
Do you put your? Oh, you don't use Twitter. Otherwise, you would put your spreadsheet up on Twitter before the game starts.
Oh man, I also don't use spreadsheets.
Can we talk about
interesting?
Can we talk about this game?
Andrew Luck, by the way, 2.43 time to throw.
Yeah, pretty low for him.
By the way, how often would you say that you use a spreadsheet?
I very rarely use a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are places where my data sits so that I can read them into R.
Love it.
So here's a game.
You might need a mist after that.
Here's a game that I think no one wants to watch. I'd rather probably lay on a bed of needles than to watch this game.
Oh boy,
but
that's a little.
I do think that there's an edge here. Arizona at home +6 against the Chicago Bears.
An edge. There's analytical.
Well, listen, man. As Jordan Matthews said about Buffalo, if all you could watch were games with Arizona and Chicago in them, you'd probably find a different hobby. Yeah.
Let's put it this way: if that was the only game on, I would be even more glued to Tiger Woods and the Tour Championship on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no desire to watch this game whatsoever. Arizona +6, totals at 38.
One of those has to budge, right? And our model doesn't like
Here it comes.
38. Right. So you hold your nose here, you take Arizona and the points.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Let's talk about one last game. This is New England, Detroit. There is no, we do real math. So there's no part of our mathematical process that says someone wrote a book about the greatest football franchise ever. And basically, I haven't read the book, so I can't comment. But I will say that everything that I've seen about it is basically that it just trashes Tom Brady. You may disagree with some of the things Tom Brady does. You may disagree with the way that he kisses his kids on the mouth. But if you want to disagree about that man just being an absolute assassin facing a toothless Detroit defense, they're going to run all over him.
Yeah, I mean, and the Patricia thing, the knowing about Patricia thing,
It's over.
The Patriots after a loss. I mean,
I'll let you guys know on mybookie.ag, I've already got New England over, locked, loaded, incommunicado. Just, it's beautiful.
Parlay.
That's what they call it.
It's a special parlay. Well, yeah, I really do like it here. I even think, I mean, the only thing keeping this number away from double digits is the fact the Lions are at home. It's a must-win game for them.
I don't know what
yada yada yada. But it's absolutely right.
Matt Patricia's explanation for using timeouts would give me pause.
I'd rather he use the TB12 method than to use his timeouts in the way he uses them.
Yeah, I don't know if you're allowed to have a pencil when. Do you think a pencil behind your ear works?
Well, don't you like write down your workouts? Like if you're like old school, you see the guys. I don't know if Patricia does that.
Yeah,
but
I do not do that either. All right, those are our picks. Make sure you check out our picks column on ProFootballFocus.com. We'll give you our five best picks of the week, and of course, Green Line is where you can get them all. MyBookie.ag is where you can make your dreams a reality. See you guys Sunday night.
Do we like crumple up a piece of paper and throw it?
Just want you to sing. Give me one note.